The mockery, the twin suns burned high above the alien desert, their heat dancing over the shifting sands. Captain Reed stood alone, his boots sinking slightly into the dusty ground, his eyes locked on the towering alien commander before him. Her name was Zira, her armor a deep metallic blue, covered with strange glowing runes that pulsed with energy. Around her, a half-circle of alien soldiers aimed their long rifles at Reed, the air trembling with the power of their charged weapons. Yet Reed didn't move, didn't even flinch, his right hand resting on the grip of the small black sidearm at his hip. Zira tilted her head and studied him with a slow smile, the kind predators gave to prey that had no chance to escape. That little thing, she said, pointing at the human gun, is supposed to scare me? Her voice dripping with amusement. A ripple of laughter spread among her soldiers, their strange guttural chuckles echoing across the empty battlefield. Reed's face stayed calm, almost bored, his eyes flicking between each of them as if calculating something only he understood. You've come a long way to die with that toy, Zira added, stepping closer, the ground trembling under her heavy boots. Reed didn't answer, instead adjusting his stance just slightly, the kind of shift only a trained soldier would notice. The wind kicked up, carrying with it the faint hum of distant machinery. Though the aliens didn't seem to notice, Zira stopped only a few meters away from him, towering over the human by nearly 2 feet. Her helmet's visor reflected Reed's face, making it look small and fragile against her armored bulk. She laughed again, louder this time, turning her head to address her soldiers. "This is the mighty human warrior?" she said. "This is what their army sends to face us?" More laughter followed, harsh and confident. Reed's eyes narrowed slightly, but still he said nothing. His silence seemed to irritate Zira, who stepped even closer until her shadow fell completely over him. "You should have stayed on your little blue planet," she sneered. "Instead, you came here to die holding a pea shooter." The alien soldiers shifted, tightening their circle, ready to end the fight before it began. But Reed's left hand slowly moved to his belt, not to draw his gun, but to press something hidden under the fabric. A soft vibration pulsed through the sand, so faint only Reed could feel it at first. Zira noticed his movement but misread it, grinning wider. "Go ahead, little human, try it," she said. "Fire your tiny shot. Make me laugh one last time before I crush you." The hum grew stronger now, a low rumble beneath their feet. Some of the alien soldiers glanced around uneasily, shifting their stances. Reed finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made even the wind seem to pause. "You should step back," he said. Zira tilted her head, her smirk unshaken. "Or what?" she mocked. Reed didn't answer, instead looking past her shoulder toward the horizon. The rumble became a steady thudding vibration, as though something massive was moving underground. A few soldiers looked down, their boots sinking slightly as the sand trembled. Zira barked at them to hold position, but her own voice had lost a fraction of its certainty. Reed took one slow breath, the kind a soldier takes before pulling the trigger. "You really think size is what matters," he said, his tone still even. "But you've got no idea what's coming." The alien commander gave a sharp laugh, masking a flicker of doubt. Her soldiers raised their rifles higher, focusing on Reed. The hum beneath the earth turned into a mechanical roar, deep and powerful. Zira glanced down for the first time, her eyes narrowing as fine cracks spread through the sand around Reed's boots. He stood perfectly still, his hand now resting on a small device on his wrist. The wind carried the scent of hot metal, and a strange shadow began to grow under Reed. Zira looked back into his eyes and saw something that made her heart beat faster. Not fear, but confidence, the kind of confidence that came from knowing you had the upper hand all along. The laughter from her soldiers began to fade, replaced by uneasy murmurs. Reed finally shifted his stance, squaring his shoulders. "Last chance to walk away," he said, his voice quiet but clear enough for every soldier to hear. Zira scoffed, but this time she didn't laugh. The ground beneath them gave one final violent tremor. As if something enormous was about to break through, Reed's finger hovered over the control on his wrist. His eyes never leaving hers. The audience would feel it now, that edge between mockery and fear. The moment before the storm, Zira's smirk trembled ever so slightly, though she tried to hide it. And then, without warning, the sand to Reed's right began to split apart with a grinding metallic scream. Every alien soldier froze, staring at the shadow rising from below. Reed didn't move, his voice calm as ever. "I told you," he said. "It's not the size of the gun that matters." Asterisk the warning, the grinding roar from beneath the sand grew louder, shaking the ground like the heartbeat of some buried giant. Alien soldiers shifted their footing, looking at each other with unease, their confidence draining with every tremor. Zira's glowing visor reflected the rippling dunes, but her eyes flicked down for just a moment. Betraying a spark of doubt, Reed stood firm, the wind tugging at his jacket, his right hand still resting lightly on the holster of the small gun she had mocked. "You don't understand what's coming," he said quietly, almost as if talking to himself. Zira gave a sharp laugh, trying to cover the crack in her confidence. "I understand perfectly, human. You're bluffing." The hum beneath them deepened, a mechanical rhythm now joined by a faint metallic hiss, like steam escaping from a pressurized chamber. The alien soldiers adjusted their rifles nervously, their weapon barrels shaking just slightly. Reed took a step forward, closing the space between them, his shadow overlapping hers. "I'll say this one last time," he said in a voice so calm it carried more weight than a shout. "Step back." Zira tilted her head, her tone sharp but uncertain. "Why? So your little toy can make a bigger noise?" Reed's lips curled into the faintest smirk. "Noise is the last thing you should be worried about." From somewhere deep below, a muffled thud echoed, followed by a wave of hot air pushing upward through the sand. The aliens flinched at the sudden heat, their armor's thermal sensors beeping warnings. One of Zira's lieutenants muttered something in their native tongue, a word that made the others stiffen. Reed glanced at him briefly, recognizing the fear in his voice. Zira barked at her soldiers to hold position, but her words carried less authority now. The ground under Reed's boots shifted as if something massive had slid into place. He looked Zira straight in the eyes. "Do you think humans came to this galaxy without a plan?" Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The wind carried a strange smell now, burnt ozone mixed with something metallic and sharp. It clung to the air like the smell before a lightning strike. Reed's voice lowered to a near whisper. "If I trigger this, nothing in 100 kilometers will survive." Some of the alien soldiers took involuntary steps backward, their grips tightening on their weapons. Zira laughed again, but it was shorter. "Weaker. You're bluffing, human. You don't have the firepower." Reed didn't move, didn't blink. "You've only seen the surface." The ground gave another violent tremor, and this time a deep, echoing clang rang out, like a massive hatch locking into place. Sand began to funnel down into a widening gap beside Reed, revealing the top of something dark and angular beneath. Zira's smirk faltered, her visor's glow reflecting the strange black metal that emerged from the earth. A pulse of blue light traveled along its surface. Humming with dangerous energy, Reed's hand hovered over the control on his wrist again, his thumb brushing the activation switch. "I'm giving you a warning because I don't want this to end in fire," he said. "But if you force me..." He didn't finish the sentence. Letting the tension hang in the air, Zira's soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, and one of them whispered, "The ground breaker," as if naming an old nightmare. Reed's eyes narrowed. "Smart soldier you have there. He knows what this is." Zira's breathing grew heavier, though she tried to mask it. The weapon below gave a low, resonant hum that vibrated in their bones. Reed took a slow step back, his eyes never leaving hers. "You mocked the gun," he said evenly, "but you forgot to ask what's under the ground." Her silence was answer enough. The air between them felt heavier now, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Somewhere in the distance, lightning flashed in the strange twin-sun sky. Though there were no clouds, Zira clenched her fists. Torn between pride and survival, Reed spoke again, softer but sharper than a blade. "Last warning, Zira. Take one step back, or watch the monster wake up." The reveal, the desert floor split open with a grinding roar, sand pouring into the widening gap like water down a drain. Alien soldiers staggered, struggling to keep their footing as the tremors grew stronger. Zira's visor reflected a glint of something metallic emerging from below. A dark shape pushing upward through the earth. The hum turned into a deep, steady throb, like the heartbeat of a machine older and stronger than anything they had seen. A circular hatch the size of a small building rose from the sand, its surface covered with human military markings burned into the steel. Zira blinked, her mind racing. She had never seen human tech like this before. The hatch rotated with a slow, deliberate motion, steam hissing from the edges. The sound was not like normal machinery, it was deeper, heavier, as if the ground itself was being forced to obey. Alien soldiers aimed their rifles, but none fired. The sheer size of the thing seemed to steal their courage. Reed didn't move, his eyes fixed on the rising shape, his hand steady over the wrist control. As the hatch opened fully, a massive barrel emerged, black and smooth, longer than any weapon Zira had ever imagined. Its tip glowed faintly, as though charged with caged lightning. A ripple of energy shimmered in the air around it, distorting the view like heat over asphalt. One alien soldier whispered in fear, "That's not possible." His voice barely audible over the hum. Zira's jaw tightened, her pride screaming at her not to show fear. "What is this?" she demanded, but her voice had lost its sharpness. Reed glanced at her. "This is why humans don't fight fair." A sudden pulse of blue light shot down the barrel, vanishing into the weapon's core with a crack of energy. The air tasted metallic now, every breath tinged with static. Zira's soldiers stepped back instinctively, their armor sensors blaring alarms. The barrel continued to rise until it towered above them, casting a massive shadow over the battlefield. Reed's voice carried over the wind, calm and unshaken. "This is the groundbreaker railgun." He let the name hang in the air, letting the aliens feel the weight of it. "It fires a tungsten slug faster than light can reach your eyes," he continued. "One shot could tear your flagship in half." The alien soldiers froze, their earlier mocking grins gone, replaced by tense, unreadable expressions. Zira's fingers twitched, her instincts torn between ordering an attack and stepping back. "You think that scares me?" she said, but there was no laughter in her tone now. Reed smiled faintly. "It should." Another mechanical thud came from the depths, and the weapon's targeting system rotated, locking onto a distant shape in the sky. Zira followed its gaze. It was aimed directly at one of her command ships hovering miles away. The hum grew higher in pitch, the glow at the barrel's tip brightening. Sand and dust lifted into the air, swirling in a ring around the weapon as its magnetic coils charged. Reed took a step to the side, his silhouette framed by the massive railgun. "You laughed at the small gun," he said, "but this one doesn't joke." The tension was suffocating now, every sound drowned out by the rising charge of the weapon. The alien stood frozen, every eye locked on the monster that had awakened. From the sand, Reed's thumb hovered over the trigger control, his calm expression telling them he wasn't bluffing. Zira's heart pounded, her pride telling her to stand firm, but her instincts screaming to retreat. One more second of silence hung over the battlefield, the kind that comes before thunder. Then, with a sharp, echoing click, Reed armed the railgun, the weapon's glow reaching a blinding blue. The monster was awake, and it was staring directly at her. The first shot, the air around the groundbreaker railgun shimmered like liquid heat, the magnetic coils glowing with a deep, dangerous blue. Every grain of sand near the weapon lifted slightly into the air, pulled upward by the sheer force of its charging energy. Alien soldiers squinted against the brightness, their armor sensors flashing red warnings. Zira's mouth tightened, her pride refusing to let her step back, but her feet shifted unconsciously in the sand. Reed didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on the distant sky where her command ship hovered like a predator bird. The weapon's massive barrel slowly tilted upward, the hum now a sharp, high-pitched whine that seemed to drill into the fuzzy ears. A faint ripple of distortion shot along the barrel, like a wave of invisible fire moving toward the tip. Zira opened her mouth to give an order, but the sound that came from the railgun drowned her voice completely. It was not just a bang. It was a tearing roar that seemed to split the world in half. A blinding blue flash erupted from the barrel, the force kicking up a hurricane of dust and sand in all directions. The projectile was so fast it didn't even leave a trail, only a violent ripple in the air that raced toward the sky. A heartbeat later, Zyra's command ship lit up like a star. The slug tore through its center, slicing through armor, machinery, and shielding as if they were paper. The explosion came an instant after, a white-hot blossom of fire and debris blooming in the thin air above the desert. The shockwave slammed into the battlefield, knocking soldiers to their knees, rattling armor plates, and making the sand dance in furious waves. Zyra's own stance broke as the force pushed her back a step, her visor flickering with damage warnings. Reed stood unmoved, the dust swirling around him like a cloak. The railguns' coils hissed and cooled, their glow fading but not disappearing, ready to fire again. The wreckage of the ship burned in the sky, raining fragments of molten metal that hissed as they hit the sand. Alien soldiers stared upward in stunned silence, their earlier mocking now replaced by the cold weight of fear. Zyra forced herself to look away from the burning remains, locking eyes with Reed. "You destroyed a flagship in one shot," she said, her voice low and tight. Reed's reply was just as calm as before. "I told you." A deep groan echoed from the railgun as its autoloader engaged, a fresh tungsten slug sliding into place with a heavy clang. Zyra's soldiers shifted uneasily, some glancing at her for orders, others at the massive weapon as if it were alive. The air still smelled of burnt ozone and scorched metal, the taste of it sharp on every tongue. Reed stepped forward, the weapon's towering shadow stretching across the alien ranks. "Do you still think size matters?" he asked, his tone cutting through the air like a blade. Zyra didn't answer, but her silence was louder than any insult. Above them, the last fragments of her command ship burned out and vanished against the twin suns. The battlefield was quiet now, but the quiet was heavy, dangerous, and waiting for the next move. The counterattack, the silence after the blast felt heavier than the roar of the shot. Alien soldiers stood frozen, the twin suns glaring down on their tense faces. Zyra's breathing was steady, but inside her mind raced with calculations. She knew she could not match the groundbreaker in raw power, but she also knew humans had weaknesses. Her visor flickered as data scrolled across the display, the railgun's heat buildup, the time it needed to cool, the ammunition count. She saw her chance. Without warning, Zyra barked an order in her native tongue, sharp and fast. The alien soldiers scattered, not retreating but moving with purpose. Reed's eyes narrowed, following their movements. Two soldiers raised heavy energy cannons, not aiming at him, but at the sand beneath the railgun. The blast struck the ground, sending plumes of molten glass into the air. The heat and impact caused the sand to collapse in places, making the weapon's support platform groan under the shifting ground. Reed's calm expression didn't change, but he moved toward the control console. Zyra herself charged forward, her armor's servos whirring, moving faster than her size suggested. She wasn't aiming for Reed. She was aiming for the wrist control that linked him to the groundbreaker. Reed turned just in time, catching her movement out of the corner of his eye. She swung her massive arm, the force enough to shatter a steel door. Reed stepped aside, but the edge of her strike caught his shoulder, knocking him off balance. His boots skidded in the sand, the control still clutched in his hand. Zyra pressed the attack, her movements sharp and relentless. Alien soldiers poured suppressing fire toward the railgun, trying to overload its shielding. The weapon's coils crackled under the barrage, a few sparks leaping from the metal. Reed regained his footing, blocking another blow from Zira's armored gauntlet. "You're desperate," he said, his tone still steady. "Desperate wins wars," she snapped back. She feinted left, then swung right. Trying to crush the control in his hand, Reed ducked low, using the momentum of her strike to shove her off balance. The desert floor trembled again. But this time it wasn't the railgun. It was the result of the alien fire weakening its underground supports. A deep cracking sound echoed beneath them, and the weapon shifted slightly. A massive barrel dipping by a few degrees. Zira's eyes gleamed. One more hit might disable it, but Reed moved faster, tapping a hidden command on the control. The groundbreaker's stabilizers slammed into place with a heavy metallic thud, locking it to the earth. The alien's hopes faltered. Reed stepped between Zira and the weapon, his silhouette sharp against the glowing coils. "You tried to bring it down," he said. "Now it's my turn again." Zira straightened, her jaw tight, realizing the window to stop him was closing. The air between them felt like a drawn bowstring. One wrong move and it would snap. Desperation, the battlefield seemed frozen for a heartbeat. The groundbreaker railgun loomed behind Reed, its coils humming softly as they recharged. Zira stood a few paces away, her armored chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. Her visor displayed more warnings now. Heat levels, troop morale dropping, weapon damage. She knew her forces were moments away from breaking completely, but surrender was not in her nature. Her eyes flicked toward the horizon, where 3 smaller alien skiffs hovered just out of range. An idea sparked in her mind, dangerous, but possibly her only chance. She tapped a hidden panel on her gauntlet, sending a coded pulse toward the skiffs. Reed noticed the subtle movement and stepped forward. "What did you just do?" he asked, his tone sharper now. Zira's lips curled into a thin smile. "Even monsters can be blinded." A moment later, the skiffs began dropping metallic pods into the desert. The pods cracked open, releasing clouds of thick silver mist. The vapor spread quickly, swirling in the hot air, coating everything in a strange shimmering haze. Reed's visor display flickered. The mist was saturated with ionized particles. It wasn't just smoke. It was a weaponized interference field. The groundbreaker's targeting systems began to struggle, their sensors blinking in confusion. Zira moved through the haze like a shadow, her heavy steps muted by the strange fog. Alien soldiers regained some of their courage. Using the cover to reposition, Reed knew if he lost visual lock, firing the railgun would be a dangerous gamble. A wrong shot could waste precious ammo, or worse, hit the wrong target. He activated his helmet's alternate vision mode, but the haze distorted even that. Zira's voice echoed through the mist, taunting. "Without your toy, you're just a man with a small gun again." Reed didn't rise to the bait, instead listening carefully. A faint scrape of armor on rock came from his left. Too close, he turned just as Zira lunged from the mist. Her gauntlet aimed directly at the control in his hand. The blow landed hard, sending the device skidding across the sand. The alien soldiers roared in renewed aggression, charging from multiple angles. Reed's mind raced. Without the control, he'd have to fire the groundbreaker manually. But the weapon was already locked on standby, its coils halfway to a full charge. He dove for the control, sliding through the sand as energy blasts sizzled past him. Zira tried to block him, but he grabbed the device and rolled to his feet. The haze still swirled thick around them, but Reed's thumb hovered over the trigger. He didn't have a clear target, only instinct and timing. Zira's shadow loomed in the mist, closer now, her voice low and dangerous. "Do it, human. See if your monster obeys in the dark." The hum of the railgun climbed higher, the air vibrating with stored power. Reed's breathing slowed, every sense tuned to the faintest movement. Somewhere in the haze, the shape of one of Zira's remaining ships flickered into view. He had a single second to decide, fire and end it, or hesitate and lose everything. The victory, the silver haze churned like a living thing, hiding shapes and shadows in its swirling folds. Reed's eyes locked on the faint outline of Zira's remaining ship, its engines glowing dimly through the mist. The hum of the groundbreaker reached a deep, bone-shaking pitch, the kind that made the air feel heavy in the lungs. Alien soldiers closed in from all sides, their silhouettes darting through the fog like predators circling prey. Zira's towering shape emerged only for a second, her visor's glow slicing through the mist before vanishing again. Reed's thumb rested on the trigger, his breath slow, steady. His instincts screamed that this was the moment. A sudden wind tore through the battlefield, scattering the silver haze just enough for him to see. The alien ship's targeting array turned us toward the groundbreaker, energy building in its cannons. Reed didn't think. He moved. His thumb pressed the trigger. The groundbreaker roared, a flash of blue fire exploding from its barrel. The shockwave punched through the air, sending a wave of hot sand outward in every direction. The tungsten slug crossed the space in a blink, tearing straight through the alien ship's core. The vessel erupted in a sphere of fire, fragments raining down in a molten shower. Alien soldiers staggered, their weapons dropping as the heat and light consumed the sky. The haze burned away in the explosion's aftermath, revealing the devastation. In stark clarity, Zira stood frozen, her visor flickering, the reflection of her ship's destruction dancing in her eyes. Her soldiers began to retreat, their discipline shattered. Reed stepped forward, the groundbreaker cooling behind him, steam hissing from its coils. "You called it a toy," he said, his voice calm but carrying across the field. He stopped just a few feet from her, his gaze steady. "Next time, remember this. Humans build small things to hide bigger ones." Zira's fists clenched, but she said nothing, the silence between them heavier than any insult. One by one, her soldiers dropped their weapons, surrendering without a word. The desert wind returned, carrying away the last of the smoke. Reed turned, the shadow of the groundbreaker stretching long across the sand. The battle was over, but the message it left behind would travel far beyond this world. On that day, every alien who had mocked humanity learned one truth: never underestimate the human hand on a hidden trigger.